They laughed at him for adopting a sick horse, not knowing it held a great secret. The laughter echoed across the yard of Clear Creek Ranch as Tyler held tight to the rope tied to the skinniest, most broken-down horse anyone had ever seen in those parts. The animal could barely stand, its ribs visible beneath its dull coat, and a dry cough escaped its lungs with every labored breath. "Have you lost your mind, boy?" shouted his Uncle Gerald, pointing a finger at him with a look of utter disbelief. "You spent the last $500 you had on this pile of bones?" The whole family had gathered in the central yard of the property. His Aunt Catherine shook her head back and forth, while his cousins Richard and Frank couldn't stop laughing. Even his cousin Bethany, usually more understanding, looked at him with a mix of pity and confusion. "Dad's right, Tyler," said Richard, wiping tears from laughing so hard. "That horse won't last a week. Just look at the state of it." The 26-year-old pressed his lips together and kept leading the animal toward the abandoned stable at the back of the property. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from a quiet anger that grew with every taunt. He knew his decision seemed absurd to everyone, but something about that horse had touched his heart in a way he couldn't explain. "Tyler, come back here," Aunt Catherine called. "You can't waste money like this. Your mother left you that inheritance to build a decent life, not to play vet for some abandoned animal." He paused for a moment, feeling the weight of her words. It was true. The $500 were nearly all that remained of the small inheritance his mother had left him. Since she'd passed 2 years ago, Tyler had been trying to rebuild himself emotionally and financially, working odd jobs at nearby ranches and dreaming of starting his own horse breeding business. "Uncle Gerald," Tyler said, slowly turning to face the family, "you always taught me that a man should trust his instincts. My gut tells me this horse is worth more than it seems." "Instincts?" Frank let out a cruel laugh. "Instincts are what keep you alive, boy, and keeping this horse alive will be impossible. Just listen to it cough." Sure enough, the horse had started coughing more frequently, and Tyler could feel each spasm through the rope. His confidence wavered as he wondered if maybe they were all right. Maybe he really had made a terrible mistake. "Listen here, boy," Gerald said, stepping closer with heavy strides. "Do you really want to throw away the money your mother worked so hard to save? She slaved away from dawn till dusk at that general store in town just to leave you something." The mention of his mother hit like a punch to the gut. Tyler felt his eyes burn, but forced himself to stay composed. Mrs. Mary had been a strong woman, raising her son alone after his father abandoned them when Tyler was just 5. She'd always believed in his dream of becoming a respected horse breeder in the region. "My mother also taught me not to give up on the weak," Tyler murmured, more to himself than to the family. "What was that?" Gerald asked, cupping a hand behind his ear. "I said my mother taught me to help those in need," Tyler repeated, louder and firmer this time. Richard rolled his eyes and nudged Frank's arm. "Here he goes again with that kindness talk. Tyler, kindness doesn't fill your belly or pay the bills. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing." The horse let out another coughing fit, this time so strong that its legs trembled and it nearly collapsed. Tyler instinctively stepped closer and placed his hand on the animal's neck, feeling the hot skin and tense muscles. For a brief moment, he questioned whether he had truly made the right decision. "See, I told you," said Catherine, pointing at the animal. "This horse is suffering, Tyler. The most merciful thing would be to—" "No," Tyler interrupted firmly. "He just needs proper care, good food, medicine, affection." "Affection?" Frank burst out laughing. "You're going to cure a sick horse with affection? And how will you pay for the medicine? With what money?" The question hit Tyler like a punch. He really hadn't thought about the cost of medication and veterinary treatment. The money he'd spent to buy the horse had practically been his last savings. I'll figure it out," he said, but his voice sounded less convincing now. "Tyler," Bethany said, stepping closer with a gentler expression, "I understand you want to help, but be realistic. You can't afford veterinary care. And this horse, just look at him, cousin. He's in terrible shape." Bethany was right, and Tyler knew it. The animal did show signs of severe malnutrition and some kind of respiratory problem that seemed serious. Its legs shook constantly, and it kept its head low as if it didn't even have the strength to lift it. "Where did you find this horse again?" Gerald asked, this time less harsh and more curious. "At the St. Benedict Livestock Fair," Tyler replied. "The owner said he was going to get rid of him today if no one bought him." "And you believed that?" Richard shook his head. "Tyler, you're too naive. The man was probably just trying to trick someone into taking his problem off his hands." "It wasn't like that," Tyler defended himself. "I talked at length with Mr. Joseph. He seemed genuinely concerned about the horse's fate, said the animal belonged to a rancher who passed away, and the family didn't want to take responsibility for him." "Joseph?" Gerald frowned. "Joseph from Good Hope Farm?" "That's right," Tyler confirmed. "You know him?" "I do," Gerald said thoughtfully. "Joseph's a good man, always been honest in business. But that doesn't change the fact you bought a horse that might not survive the week." Tyler looked at the animal again and felt a tightness in his chest. The horse gazed back at him with large, tired eyes, as if begging for a chance. There was something in that look that moved him deeply, a kind of wounded dignity that stirred all his compassion. "I have to at least try," Tyler said, determined. "If he doesn't make it, at least he'll know someone cared about him." "Tyler," Catherine began, but she was interrupted by another coughing fit from the horse. This time, the animal actually collapsed to its knees, panting and trembling. Tyler immediately knelt beside it, running his hand gently over its neck in soothing motions. "Easy, boy," Tyler murmured. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you." The family watched in silence, and for the first time since Tyler had arrived with the horse, the mocking stopped. There was something touching in the way the young man treated the sick animal, a tenderness that reminded them all how he had always been sensitive to animals since childhood. "All right," Gerald said after a long sigh. "You can keep the horse, but there are conditions." Tyler looked up, hopeful. "First," Gerald continued, "you'll use the old stable out back. I don't want this animal near the healthy horses until we know exactly what's wrong with him. Second, all costs are on you. I won't spend a single cent on this project of yours." "Thank you, Uncle," said Tyler, standing up quickly. "You won't regret this." "I already do," grumbled Gerald, "but your mother always said you had a heart too big for your own good." Maybe she was right. Frank and Richard kept shaking their heads in disapproval, but made no further comments. Bethany approached Tyler as he helped the horse to its feet. "Cousin," she said softly, "I admire your kindness, but be careful. You can't get so emotionally involved that you forget reality." "I know, Bethany," Tyler replied, "but look into his eyes. There's something special about this horse, I'm sure of it." Bethany looked at the animal and had to admit that, despite its pitiful state, there was something striking about those eyes, an intelligence that seemed unusual, as if the horse understood every word of their conversation. "What will you name him?" she asked. Tyler thought for a moment, watching the horse now standing again, though still trembling. "Hope," he finally said. "I'll call him Hope." "Hope?" Richard laughed from a distance. "What a perfect name for a horse that doesn't stand a chance of surviving." Tyler ignored his cousin's remark and began leading Hope toward the abandoned stable. The animal followed slowly, stumbling occasionally but showing a gentleness that impressed even the most skeptical members of the family. The abandoned stable stood at the farthest corner of the property, near a small creek that ran through the ranch. The place hadn't been used in years and was in terrible condition. The roof leaked in several places, the wooden walls were worn, and the floor was covered in dry leaves and branches. "My God," Tyler murmured as he took in the state of the place. "This is going to take a lot of work." Hope didn't seem to mind the poor conditions. As soon as Tyler led him inside, the horse went straight to a corner and lay down, clearly exhausted from the walk. Tyler watched the animal rest, feeling a mix of determination and apprehension. He truly had no idea how he'd afford veterinary care, nor did he know if he had enough experience to care for such a weakened horse. As he walked back to the main house, Tyler caught fragments of his family's conversation on the porch. "Poor boy," Catherine said. "He's trying to cope with losing his mother by clinging to hopeless causes." "It's not our fault if he refuses to face reality," Frank replied. "Life is hard, and the sooner he learns that, the better." "Frank, Have some compassion, Bethany scolded. Tyler's always been this way, even as a child. Remember when he brought home that injured dog? I remember, Richard said. And I also remember the dog recovered and then ran away. I bet the same thing will happen with this horse, if it even survives. Tyler climbed the porch steps slowly. His family's words stung, but he tried to understand their perspective. It really did seem foolish to spend his last resources on an animal that might not make it. Tyler, Gerald called as he saw him approach. Come here, we need to talk. The young man walked over and sat in one of the old rocking chairs that decorated the porch. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in orange hues that contrasted with the family's tense mood. Son, Gerald began, choosing his words carefully, I know you miss your mother. We all do. Mary was an extraordinary woman, and you inherited her heart. Tyler nodded, his throat tight. But, Gerald continued, you can't keep trying to save the world to fill the void she left. It's not healthy, and it's not what she would have wanted for you. That's not it, Uncle, said Tyler, defensive. I really believe this horse is special. Special how? Asked Frank, who had come closer to listen to the conversation. Can it fly? Talk? Do magic tricks? Frank, scolded Catherine. Don't be cruel. I'm not being cruel, Mom. I'm being realistic. Tyler, what special quality did you see in this sick horse that the rest of us can't? Tyler hesitated. How could he explain a feeling, a hunch? How could he describe the way the horse had looked at him at the fair as if it were specifically asking for his help? I can't explain it, he finally admitted. But when I looked at him at the fair, it was like he was trying to tell me something. Horses don't talk, Tyler, said Richard, sarcastic. I know they don't talk with words, Tyler countered, but they communicate in other ways, and this horse, there's something different about him. Different like dying? Pressed Frank. Frank, enough, said Bethany firmly. Leave Tyler alone. If he wants to take care of the horse, that's his problem. Thank you, Bethany, said Tyler, grateful for his cousin's support. But I agree with one thing Frank said, Bethany continued. You need to be realistic about the costs. How are you going to pay the vet? That was the question Tyler had been avoiding. He truly didn't have the money for proper veterinary care, and he didn't know how to get it. I'll figure it out, he said, but his voice didn't sound convincing even to himself. Tyler, said Gerald, standing up from his chair, I'll make you a deal. If in 1 week this horse shows real signs of improvement, I'll pay for a vet visit. Tyler looked at his uncle in surprise and gratitude. Really? Really, Gerald confirmed. But if in a week he's the same or worse, you'll admit you made a mistake and stop wasting time and energy on lost causes. Uncle, Tyler began. Do we have a deal or not? Gerald interrupted. Tyler glanced toward the abandoned stable where Hope was resting. 1 week. 7 days to prove his intuition was right, that there was something special about that horse beyond its current condition. Deal, said Tyler, extending his hand to seal the agreement. Gerald shook his nephew's hand firmly. Good, but remember, 1 week, not a day more. As the family dispersed for their evening activities, Tyler remained on the porch watching the first stars appear in the sky. He had just made a promise that might be impossible to keep, but something inside him insisted he was on the right path. That first night, Tyler barely slept. He got up several times to check on Hope, walking barefoot across the dew-covered grass to the abandoned stable. Each time, he found the horse lying in the same corner, breathing heavily but seemingly stable. The next morning, Tyler woke before sunrise and went straight to the stable. He found Hope standing, which was already progress from the night before. The horse greeted him with a soft, weak whinny, but there was something in that sound that filled Tyler with hope. Good morning, boy, said Tyler, approaching slowly. How are you feeling today? Hope lifted his head slightly, as if understanding the question. His eyes seemed more alert than the day before, though they still showed exhaustion. Tyler had brought a bucket of fresh water and some hay left over from the other horses. He placed both within Hope's reach and watched with satisfaction as the animal took long gulps of water. That's it, Tyler encouraged. You need to stay hydrated. The horse sniffed the hay but didn't eat it right away. Tyler understood that severely weakened animals sometimes lost their appetite, so he wasn't too worried. The important thing was that Hope had drunk water, which was a good sign. As he observed the horse, Tyler began noticing details he had missed the day before. Despite its extreme thinness, Hope had a bone structure that suggested it had once been a majestic animal. Its legs were well proportioned, and there was a natural elegance in its movements, even in its weakened state. "You were handsome once, weren't you?" Tyler murmured, carefully running his hand along the animal's neck. "I bet you were someone's pride and joy." As if understanding the comment, Hope tilted its head slightly to the side, allowing Tyler to continue petting it. It was a gesture of trust that deeply touched the young man. "Tyler!" a voice called from the main house. "Come have breakfast." It was Catherine calling him to the table. Tyler gave Hope one last pat and promised to return soon. "Rest a little, boy. I'll be back shortly to check on you." During breakfast, the family avoided bringing up the horse, but Tyler could feel their curious and skeptical glances directed at him. Bethany was the only one who asked how Hope had spent the night. "He drank water," Tyler reported, trying to sound optimistic. "That's a good sign." "Drinking water is the bare minimum any living animal does," Richard remarked. "It doesn't mean he's getting better." "Richard, please," Bethany said. "Let Tyler have a little hope." "Hope won't save that horse," Frank said. "Only a miracle would." Tyler finished his breakfast in silence and returned to the stable. To his surprise, he found Hope standing, slowly walking around the small space. The horse seemed to be exploring its new surroundings, sniffing the walls and floor with curiosity. "Look at you," Tyler said, excited. "Already making yourself at home?" Hope willingly approached him, something it hadn't done the day before. The horse sniffed Tyler's hand and then gently rested its head on his shoulder. It was then that Tyler noticed something that made him freeze. On Hope's neck, hidden beneath the tangled mane, was a small mark. It wasn't just any mark. It looked like an old brand, nearly faded with time. Tyler carefully pushed the hair aside to examine it better. His eyes widened when he could finally make out what appeared to be a specific shape, a stylized crown with 3 points. "What kind of mark is this?" Tyler murmured to himself. Hope pulled away slightly when Tyler tried to inspect the mark more closely, as if it were a sensitive spot. The young man respected the animal's discomfort and stopped touching the area. But that discovery planted a seed of curiosity in Tyler's mind. Who had branded this horse? And why did the mark seem so elaborate, unlike the common brands farmers usually used? The rest of the first day passed quietly. Tyler worked on cleaning the stable, removing branches, dry leaves, and patching some of the leaks in the roof. Hope watched him work with interest, as if approving the efforts to improve its new home. By the afternoon, Tyler noticed the horse had finally eaten some hay. Not much, but enough to show its appetite was starting to return. That small victory filled Tyler with optimism. At dinner, he shared the good news with the family. "He ate today," Tyler announced, "and he's walking more, exploring the stable." Gerald grumbled. "Still 6 days left to see if he'll really recover." "I know, Uncle, but they're positive signs, aren't they?" "They are," Bethany admitted. "Small, but positive." Frank and Richard exchanged skeptical glances, but didn't make any negative comments this time. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, continuing. On the second night, Tyler again had trouble sleeping, but this time it wasn't just worry. It was also the mysterious mark he had discovered on Hope's neck. He couldn't get that image out of his head. The stylized crown with 3 points looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he'd seen anything like it. On the second day, Tyler woke before dawn again and went to check on Hope. To his delight, he found the horse standing, drinking water and chewing some hay. The improvement was subtle, but definitely noticeable. "Good morning, Hope," Tyler greeted. "You're looking better today." It was true. Though still very thin and weak, Hope seemed more alert. His eyes had a brightness that hadn't been there the first day, and he moved with a little more energy. Tyler decided it was time to try a more direct approach. He picked up an old brush he'd found in the stable and slowly approached Hope. "How about a brushdown?" he asked gently. "I bet it'll make you feel better." To his surprise, Hope not only allowed the brushing but seemed to enjoy it. The horse closed his eyes and relaxed his muscles as Tyler ran the brush softly through his tangled coat. It was during this brushing that Tyler made another intriguing discovery. Beneath the dirty, matted fur, Hope's coat revealed an unusual pattern. He was a light bay with darker markings, but there was something about the way those markings were arranged that looked almost artistic. "You're beautiful, you know," Tyler said, continuing to brush. "Under all that dirt, you're really a handsome horse." Hope let out a soft whinny, as if he understood the compliment. Then something happened that left Tyler stunned. The horse stepped away from him and walked to the back wall of the stable. There, he began tapping his front hoof rhythmically against the ground. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, pause. "What are you doing?" Tyler asked, confused. Hope repeated the pattern. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. Then he looked straight at Tyler, as if expecting him to understand something. 3 taps, Tyler murmured, "like the mark on your neck. 3 points on the crown. 3 taps." The horse stopped tapping when Tyler mentioned the mark, somehow confirming there was a connection. "What are you trying to tell me?" Tyler asked, moving closer to the spot where Hope had tapped. The ground looked normal, packed dirt like any other stable, but when Tyler knelt and examined it more closely, he noticed something different about that specific area. The dirt seemed softer, as if it had been disturbed recently. "Is there something buried here?" Tyler asked, more to himself than the horse. Hope tapped his hoof once, as if confirming. Tyler looked around for something to dig with, but decided it would be better to understand what was happening first. Maybe he was imagining connections where none existed. Maybe it was just coincidence. But as he continued brushing Hope, a memory began forming in his mind. The crown with 3 points. He had seen that mark before, but where? The day passed quickly as Tyler cared for Hope and tried to remember where he'd seen that mark. The horse kept showing signs of improvement. He ate more hay, drank plenty of water, and even took a few steps outside the stable when Tyler led him out for some sun. At lunch, Tyler decided to ask the family a casual question. "Have any of you ever seen a brand shaped like a crown with 3 points?" The question caused a momentary silence at the table. "Why do you want to know?" asked Gerald with a curious expression. "Just curiosity," said Tyler, trying to sound casual. "I saw a similar brand and it looked familiar." "Crown with 3 points," murmured Catherine thoughtfully. "That reminds me of something." "Reminds you of what?" asked Bethany. "I don't know. Something from the past. Maybe from my parents' time." "Must be some old ranch brand from the area," said Frank, uninterested. "Back in the day, every rancher had their own registered brand." "That's true," agreed Richard, "but most don't use them anymore. Everything's electronic these days." The conversation moved on, but Tyler noticed Catherine remained lost in thought for the rest of lunch. There was something about that brand that had stirred a memory in her. He was sure of it. After lunch, Tyler returned to the stable and found Hope once again in the same corner where he had pawed the ground that morning. The horse stared at him intently, as if waiting for him to do something. "You want me to dig here, is that it?" asked Tyler. Hope stomped his hoof once. Tyler glanced around to make sure no one was watching, then fetched an old shovel he'd seen leaning against the stable's outer wall. He returned and began carefully digging where Hope had indicated. He didn't have to dig far. About half a meter down, the shovel hit something solid. Tyler's heart raced as he cleared the dirt around the object, revealing what looked like a small rusted metal box. "My God," Tyler murmured, lifting the box from the earth. "What is this?" Hope stepped closer, sniffed the box, then looked at Tyler as if encouraging him to open it. Tyler's hands trembled as he tried to pry open the box. Rust had sealed the lid shut, but with some effort it gave way. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth that had resisted the moisture, were several old yellow documents. Tyler carefully unrolled the first one. It was an animal registration certificate dated over 40 years ago. The registered horse's name was Golden Empire, described as a thoroughbred stallion, son of Royal Emperor and grandson of King Peter I. "Golden Empire," Tyler read aloud. Is that your real name?" Hope, or Golden Empire, whinnied softly, as if recognizing his original name. Tyler kept examining the documents. There were lineage certificates, equestrian competition awards, and even old photographs showing a magnificent horse being ridden by a well-dressed man in competition attire. But it was the last document that made Tyler grasp the true magnitude of his discovery. It was a death certificate for a man named Colonel Anthony Mitchell, dated 3 years prior. The document stated that the deceased was the owner of valuable horses of royal lineage, and that they were to be protected and preserved according to his final wishes. "Mitchell," Tyler murmured. "My last name is Mitchell too. Could it be a coincidence? Or was there some family connection he didn't know about?" Tyler carefully placed the documents back in the box and hid it under a pile of hay in the stable. He needed time to process everything before deciding what to do with this information. Golden Empire, because now Tyler knew that was the horse's true name, wasn't just some abandoned, sick animal. He was a horse of noble lineage, possibly valuable, and certainly with a far more complex history than anyone in the family could have imagined. But this also raised new questions. If the horse was truly worth so much, how had he ended up in Joseph's hands at the livestock auction? And why had he been in such poor condition? Even more important, what should Tyler do with this information? Telling the family could result in them taking the horse away from him, especially if they discovered it might be worth a fortune. But keeping it a secret didn't feel right either. As he pondered these questions, Tyler continued caring for Golden Empire. The horse seemed to know his secret had been uncovered and showed even more trust in his new caretaker. That afternoon, he allowed Tyler to examine his entire body, revealing other marks and scars that told the story of his life. There was a scar on his right flank that looked like the result of some kind of accident, and his hooves showed signs of having been shod by specialized professionals, the kind of work done only on high-value horses. "You've had a rough time lately, haven't you?" Tyler said, gently stroking the animal's neck. "But that's going to change now, I promise." On the third day, Tyler woke with a sense of urgency. Golden Empire had shown significant improvement, but was still far from fully recovered, and he had only 4 days left to prove to the family that the horse was worth keeping. Even more complicated was the matter of the documents he'd discovered. During the night, Tyler had decided he needed to investigate more about Colonel Anthony Mitchell before making any decisions. After tending to Golden Empire in the morning, Tyler went to the main house and asked to use Bethany's computer to research horse care. In truth, he wanted to look up Colonel Mitchell. What he found online left him even more confused. Colonel Anthony Mitchell had been a highly respected rancher in the region, known for breeding thoroughbred horses. He had passed away 3 years ago, leaving behind a considerable fortune, but no known direct heirs. Even more intriguing, Tyler discovered that the Colonel's ranch was only 50 kilometers away in the neighboring town of St. Benedict, exactly where Joseph had sold Golden Empire at the cattle fair. "This can't be a coincidence," Tyler muttered to himself. "What can't be a coincidence?" Bethany asked, appearing behind him. Tyler quickly closed the browser page. "Oh, nothing important. Just reading about horse nutrition." "Glad to hear you're doing your research," Bethany said. "How's Hope doing today?" "Better," Tyler replied, trying to sound casual. "Much better." "That's good to hear. Dad's starting to get curious about the horse's improvement. Last night he mentioned you might really have a special way with animals." This news filled Tyler with both hope and apprehension. If Gerald was noticing Golden Empire's improvement, that was good for their agreement. But it also meant more people would soon be paying attention to the horse. "Bethany," Tyler said, deciding to risk a question, "do you know if our family has any connection to the St. Benedict area?" "St. Benedict? Why do you ask?" "Just curious. The man who sold me the horse was from there, and I wondered if our families might have known each other in the past." Bethany thought for a moment. "Not that I know of, but you could ask Grandma Catherine. She knows the family history better." Tyler nodded, but decided it would be risky to ask too many questions for now. First, he needed to understand the situation better before arousing the family's curiosity. Back in the stable, he found Golden Empire clearly more lively. The horse had finished all his hay and water and was standing attentively watching the activity around the ranch. "Good morning, boy," Tyler greeted him. "You're looking much better today." It was true. Though still thin, Golden Empire seemed to have regained some of the natural dignity that documents and photographs suggested he once possessed. His posture was straighter, and there was a gleam in his eyes that hadn't been there in the early days. Tyler decided it was time to try something more ambitious. He picked up a rope and approached the horse. "How about we get out of here and take a walk?" he suggested. "A little exercise will do you good." Golden Empire allowed himself to be led without resistance, following Tyler out of the stable. The two walked slowly around the property, the horse exploring the new surroundings with growing curiosity. It was during this walk that something extraordinary happened. As they passed near the main stable, where the family's other horses were kept, Golden Empire suddenly stopped and lifted his head, inhaling deeply. Then, to Tyler's astonishment, the horse let out a loud, powerful whinny, the first strong sound he had made since arriving at the ranch. It was a whinny that echoed across the entire property, a sound of nobility and strength that completely contrasted with his frail appearance. The other horses responded immediately, moving toward the fences and whinnying back. It was as if they recognized something special in Golden Empire, something beyond his current physical condition. "What was that?" shouted Frank, running toward them. "What was that noise?" "It was Hope," said Tyler, trying to mask his own surprise. "He was talking to the other horses." Frank looked at Golden Empire with a different expression. The whinny had been so powerful and commanding that it was impossible to ignore. "That doesn't look like the same sick horse you brought home," Frank remarked, studying the animal closely. "He's recovering," Tyler said, keeping his voice casual. "Recovering is an understatement," Frank replied. "Look at his posture. It's like he's royalty or something." "If only you knew how right you are," Tyler thought. The commotion had drawn the rest of the family. Gerald, Catherine, Bethany, and Richard came over to see what was happening. "My goodness," Catherine said as she saw Golden Empire. "He looks completely different." "Is that the same horse?" Richard asked, skeptical. "Of course it's the same horse," Tyler replied. "He just needed proper care." "Tyler," Gerald said, cautiously stepping closer to Golden Empire. "Can I touch him?" "Sure, Uncle. He's very gentle." Gerald reached out and carefully stroked the horse's neck. Golden Empire remained calm but alert, as if assessing the new human touching him. "There's something familiar about this horse," Gerald murmured, frowning. "The bone structure, the shape of his head. It's like I've seen a horse like this before." Tyler's heart raced. Could Gerald recognize some trait from Golden Empire's lineage? "Familiar how?" Catherine asked, moving closer for a better look. "I don't know. Maybe it's just my imagination," Gerald said, still examining the horse. "But there's something about him that reminds me of the horses from the ranch of—" Gerald stopped mid-sentence, his expression growing more surprised. "From where, Dad?" Bethany asked. "Catherine," Gerald said, turning to his wife. "Do you remember Colonel Mitchell's horses?" Catherine's eyes widened. "Colonel Anthony Mitchell? From Whitestone Farm?" "That's the one," Gerald confirmed. "Do you remember what his horses were like? Elegant, imposing, with that noble posture." "I do," Catherine said, looking at Golden Empire with new interest. "But Gerald, the colonel died about 3 years ago, and the ranch was sold after they couldn't find any heirs." "Exactly," Gerald said. "And do you remember what happened to his horses?" "No. I don't remember hearing about that." "Neither do I," said Gerald thoughtfully. "But this horse, there's something about him that reminds me a lot of the colonel's animals." Tyler listened to the conversation with growing tension. The family was dangerously close to uncovering the truth on their own, without him revealing anything about the documents he had found. "Did you know this colonel?" Tyler asked, trying to sound merely curious. "We knew him by sight," said Catherine. "He used to attend the local cattle fairs. He was a highly respected man, knew a lot about horses. And he had the best animals in the entire region," Gerald added. "Thoroughbreds of noble lineage. They were magnificent." "Like this one," said Frank, observing Golden Empire with newfound respect. "Now that you mention it, I can see that nobility in him. "But that doesn't make sense," said Richard. "If this was a valuable horse, how did he end up at the cattle fair in such poor condition?" It was exactly the question Tyler had been asking himself, and he suspected the answer wouldn't be simple or pleasant. "Maybe someone didn't know his worth," suggested Bethany. "Or perhaps he got lost, or was stolen." "Stolen," said Catherine, alarmed. "Tyler, what if this horse is stolen? We could be in trouble." "Calm down, Catherine," said Gerald. "Tyler bought the horse legally from Joseph, who's an honest man. If something were wrong, Joseph wouldn't be selling him at a public fair." "Even so," Catherine insisted, "maybe we should look further into this horse's origins." Tyler felt he was losing control of the situation. If the family decided to officially investigate Golden Empire's background, they'd find the buried documents, and the whole truth would come out. "I can talk to Joseph," Tyler quickly offered. "Ask him exactly where he got the horse." "Good idea," Gerald agreed. "But for now, let's keep taking care of him. Whatever his story is, he clearly needed help." The family dispersed, but Tyler noticed they all kept looking at Golden Empire with newfound curiosity. The secret he was trying to keep was becoming harder to hide. That afternoon, while brushing Golden Empire, Tyler had a frank conversation with the horse. "You heard the family talking," he said. "They're starting to suspect you're special. And they're right, aren't they?" Golden Empire looked at him with those intelligent eyes, as if he perfectly understood the complicated situation they were both in. "I don't know what to do," Tyler confessed. "If I tell them about the documents, they'll want to know why I hid them. But if I don't and they find out on their own..." The horse stepped closer and gently rested his head on Tyler's shoulder, a comforting gesture that deeply moved the young man. "You trust me, don't you?" Tyler asked. "Then trust that I'll find a way to fix this. But first, I need to uncover the whole truth about your story." Tyler knew he had to go to St. Benedict and speak with Joseph. He needed to understand exactly how Golden Empire had ended up in his hands and why a horse of noble lineage was in such poor condition. But there was another problem. How could he explain this trip to the family without raising even more suspicion? The answer came during dinner, when Gerald mentioned he needed to go to St. Benedict the next day to take care of some bank business. "Uncle," Tyler said, seizing the opportunity, "could I come with you? I'd like to talk to Joseph about Hope's origins like you suggested." "Of course," Gerald said. "Actually, that's a good idea. Better to clear this up sooner rather than later." "I'll go too," said Frank. "I'm curious to hear this story." Tyler didn't like the idea of Frank coming along, but he couldn't protest without seeming suspicious. "Great," he said, forcing a smile. "Tomorrow, we'll uncover the whole truth." On the fourth morning, Tyler woke with a mix of nerves and anticipation. Today, he would finally learn how Golden Empire had ended up at the cattle fair and perhaps understand the mystery surrounding the horse better. Before heading to St. Benedict, he went to check on Golden Empire one last time. The horse looked visibly better with each passing day. His coat was beginning to regain its natural shine, and his movements were steadier and more confident. "Good morning, boy," Tyler greeted him. "Today I'll find out your full story. Let's hope it's one with a happy ending." Golden Empire stepped closer and allowed Tyler to stroke him, a morning ritual they'd developed. It was in these quiet moments that Tyler felt the special bond between them most strongly. "Tyler, let's go," Gerald called from the main house. "The sooner we leave, the sooner we'll be back." The trip to St. Benedict took about an hour. Along the way, Frank couldn't stop speculating about Golden Empire's mysterious origins. "I bet he's a stolen horse," Frank said. "It's the only explanation for a valuable animal being sold for $500 at a fair." "Or maybe his previous owner didn't know his worth," Gerald suggested. "Not everyone understands horses." "Or maybe," Tyler said, trying to offer another explanation, "he got sick, and the owner thought treatment wasn't worth the cost." "Possible," Gerald agreed. "Let's see what Joseph has to say." They found Joseph at the cattle fair, held every Wednesday in St. Benedict. He was a middle-aged man, sun-tanned, with the calloused hands of someone who'd worked with animals for decades. "Tyler," Joseph greeted him with a smile. "How's that horse you bought? Did you manage to improve his condition?" "I did, Mr. Joseph," Tyler replied. "He's much better now. In fact, we came here because we wanted to learn more about his background." Joseph's smile faded slightly. "His background, well, It's a bit of a complicated story. Complicated how? Frank asked, always blunt. Joseph glanced around as if checking for eavesdroppers, then motioned for them to follow him to a more private spot. Did you know Colonel Anthony Mitchell? He asked. Gerald and Frank exchanged looks. We knew him by sight, Gerald said. He passed away about 3 years ago, didn't he? That's right, Joseph confirmed, and ever since the story of his ranch has been a real mess. What kind of mess? Tyler asked, his heart pounding. Well, Joseph began, clearly uncomfortable. After the colonel died, several people came forward claiming rights to his inheritance. Some said they were distant relatives. Others claimed they had verbal agreements with him. And the horses? Frank pressed. Ah, the horses. That's the sad part of the story, Joseph sighed. The colonel had over 20 thoroughbreds, all from noble bloodlines, but with all the inheritance chaos, no one took proper responsibility for them. What do you mean? Gerald asked, clearly upset. The so-called heirs were more interested in the property and money than the animals, Joseph explained. The horses were left in the care of the ranch workers, but without proper resources. Some were sold off in a hurry, others ended up neglected. Tyler felt a growing anger at what he was hearing. And the horse I bought? That one was the colonel's favorite, Joseph said sadly. A magnificent animal, from royal bloodlines. But he fell ill during all this commotion, and none of the would-be heirs wanted to spend money on veterinary treatment. What kind of people are these? Frank exploded. Letting an animal suffer out of greed? Unfortunately, it's more common than you think, said Joseph. When large sums of money are involved, some people lose their compassion. And how did the horse end up with you? Asked Tyler. Joseph hesitated before answering. Well, let's just say I couldn't stand by and watch the animal die from neglect, so I took him with me, hoping to find someone who'd care for him properly. You practically saved his life, said Tyler gratefully. I tried, said Joseph, but I didn't have the means to give him the treatment he needed either. When I saw you at the fair, interested in horses, I thought you might be the right person. And you were right, said Gerald, placing a hand on Tyler's shoulder. My nephew has a special way with animals. I'm glad to hear the horse is doing well, said Joseph, smiling again. He deserves a good life after all he's been through. Mr. Joseph, said Tyler, deciding to risk a more specific question, do you know if the colonel had any relatives with the last name Mitchell? Mitchell? Joseph thought for a moment. Well, the colonel himself was a Mitchell. Why? It's just that my last name is Mitchell too, Tyler explained. I thought there might be some family connection. Said Joseph, looking at Tyler with renewed interest. You know, the colonel always said he had a nephew who'd lost touch with the family years ago. He never mentioned the name, but a lost nephew? Asked Gerald, surprised. Yes, Joseph confirmed. The colonel even hired detectives to look for this nephew, said he wanted to leave everything to him since he had no children. Tyler felt the world spinning around him. Could it be possible that... Do you know anything else about this nephew? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Not many details, said Joseph. Just that the colonel's brother had left the area many years ago because of some family feud. The colonel always regretted the separation. Frank looked at Tyler with a puzzled expression. Tyler, when did your father leave this area? I'm not sure, Tyler stammered. My mother never talked much about my father's family. What an interesting coincidence, Gerald murmured. The conversation was interrupted when a man approached Joseph asking about cattle. They said their goodbyes, but Tyler knew the talk had planted seeds of suspicion in Gerald and Frank's minds. On the way back, Frank couldn't stop asking questions about Tyler's family. Are you sure you don't know anything else about your father's family? Frank pressed. My mother said he'd had a falling out with his family and left the area, said Tyler. She never went into details. And your father's name was? Asked Gerald. Robert Mitchell, Tyler replied. Gerald hit the truck's brakes so hard that everyone lurched forward. Robert Mitchell, he repeated, disbelieving. Yes. Why? Asked Tyler, though he already suspected the answer. Tyler, Gerald said slowly. Robert Mitchell was the name of Colonel Anthony's brother. The truck fell completely silent for a few seconds. Then Frank burst out, "You mean Tyler is the Colonel's long-lost nephew? The heir he was looking for?" "Seems that way," said Gerald, looking at Tyler with a mix of shock and admiration. Tyler felt as if he were in a dream. Everything was falling into place in a way that seemed impossible, yet made perfect sense. "But then," said Frank, processing the implications, "the horse Tyler bought—" "Technically, it was already his by right," Gerald added, "if he really is the Colonel's heir." "Wait," said Tyler, trying to process everything. "Are you saying my great-uncle was Colonel Anthony Mitchell, and that I was supposed to inherit his ranch?" "That's exactly what we're saying," Gerald replied. "The question is, how do we prove it?" Frank suddenly burst into loud laughter. "Do you realize the irony of all this? Tyler was killing himself to take care of a horse that was already rightfully his. And we laughed at him for wasting money," Gerald added, shaking his head, when in fact he was just reclaiming his own inheritance. The trip back passed in a haze of revelations and speculation. Tyler could hardly believe that in just a few days his life had completely changed. From a poor young man tending to a sick horse, he had potentially become the heir to a considerable fortune. But there was one problem. How could he prove his identity and claim the inheritance? And more importantly, what should he do with the documents he had found buried in the stable? When they arrived at the ranch, they were greeted by Catherine and Bethany, eager to hear how the conversation with Joseph had gone. "So," Catherine asked, "did you find out anything interesting?" "Interesting is an understatement," said Frank, still processing everything they had discovered. "Mom, sit down. You won't believe what we're about to tell you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. The revelation caused a real uproar in the family. Catherine had to sit down when she learned that Tyler might be Colonel Mitchell's long-lost heir. Bethany was speechless for several minutes, staring at her cousin as if seeing him for the first time. "This is unbelievable," Catherine finally said. "Tyler, are you sure about your father's name?" "I'm certain," Tyler confirmed. "And now that you mention it, I remember my mother saying he had an older brother he'd fought with. She always said that one day, when I was older, she'd tell me the whole story." "But she never did?" Bethany asked. "No," Tyler said sadly. "She passed away before we could have that talk." "Poor Mary," Catherine sighed. "She probably knew about the connection, but didn't want to give false hope." "Or maybe," Gerald suggested, "she didn't know the Colonel was looking for you." "The issue now," Frank said, ever practical, "is how to prove all this. Knowing the truth won't help if we can't legally verify it." That was exactly what Tyler was thinking, and he knew he had documents in his possession that could help with that proof, but it would mean admitting he'd hidden information from the family. "I need to go check on Hope," Tyler said abruptly, standing up. "Not Hope, Tyler," Bethany corrected with a smile. "Now that we know his story, he deserves to be called by his real name. Golden Empire, right?" Tyler froze mid-step. How did Bethany know the horse's real name? "How did you—" he began. "Joseph mentioned it," Frank explained. "He said the horse was called Golden Empire and was one of the Colonel's favorites." "Oh, right," Tyler said, relieved. For a moment, he'd thought they'd found out about the hidden documents. In the stable, Tyler found Golden Empire noticeably stronger and more alert. The horse seemed to sense something important had happened, watching Tyler with unusual attention. "Well, boy," Tyler said, stroking the animal's neck, "looks like we've uncovered your story, and mine too." Tyler told the horse everything they had discovered, though he knew he was speaking more to organize his own thoughts than because he thought the animal understood. "The question is," Tyler concluded, "what do we do now? I have those documents you showed me, but if I reveal them now, they'll want to know why I hid the discovery." Golden Empire moved closer to the corner, where the documents were hidden, and pawed the ground as if signaling it was time to bring them to light. "You're right," Tyler sighed. "I can't keep hiding this, especially if these documents can help prove my identity." Tyler went to retrieve the buried box and examined its contents again. Alongside Golden Empire's registration papers, there were documents that appeared to be personal records of the Colonel. One of them was a handwritten letter, yellowed with age. With his heart pounding, Tyler carefully unfolded the letter and began to read. "If someone is reading this letter, it means something has happened to me and my horses are in danger. My name is Anthony Mitchell, and I've dedicated my life to breeding the noblest horses in this region. But my greatest regret is losing touch with my brother Robert after a foolish argument over 20 years ago. He left the area with his wife Mary, and I never heard from them again. Robert, if you ever read this, know that I've always forgiven you, and that I never stopped searching for you and your family. All my fortune and my horses rightfully belong to you. I leave this letter alongside the papers of my most prized horse, Golden Empire, in the hope that one day it reaches the right hands. If you are my nephew, Robert's son, know that Golden Empire holds all the secrets of this property. He was trained by me personally and knows where the most important documents are hidden. Take good care of him, and he will take good care of you. With love and regret, Anthony Mitchell." Tyler had to sit down on a pile of hay, overwhelmed by emotion. The letter not only confirmed his identity as the heir, but also explained why Golden Empire had led him to the documents. "My God," Tyler murmured, looking at Golden Empire with newfound respect. "You knew all along, didn't you? You knew who I was." The horse stepped closer and gently rested its head against Tyler's shoulder, as if confirming his suspicion. "You chose me at the fair," Tyler continued, finally understanding. "You knew I was your owner's nephew, and you picked me to bring me back home." The realization of what had truly happened left Tyler deeply moved. Golden Empire hadn't just been an abandoned horse he'd rescued. The horse had been sent by fate to guide him back to his true family and inheritance. But there was still the matter of how to reveal all this to the family without causing conflict. Tyler knew he had to be honest about finding the documents, even if it meant admitting he'd kept information hidden. He carefully placed the letter and other papers back in the box and decided it was time to face the situation. He couldn't keep secrets when so much was at stake. Walking back to the main house, Tyler rehearsed in his mind how he would explain everything. He decided complete honesty would be the best approach, even if it initially caused distrust. He found the family still gathered in the living room, eagerly discussing the implications of that morning's discovery. "Everyone," Tyler said, interrupting the conversation, "I have something very important to show you." "What is it?" asked Bethany. "First, I need to confess something," Tyler said, taking a deep breath. "Over the past few days, I've discovered some things about Hope, about Golden Empire, that I didn't tell you." The atmosphere in the room shifted immediately. Gerald straightened up in his chair and Frank crossed his arms defensively. "What kind of things?" asked Gerald in a serious tone. "On the second day the horse was here, he showed me where some documents were buried in the stable," explained Tyler. "I found them and discovered he really was Golden Empire, a horse of noble lineage that belonged to Colonel Mitchell." "And you didn't tell us?" asked Frank, clearly irritated. "I didn't know what to do," Tyler defended himself. "I was afraid you'd take the horse away if you knew he was valuable." "Tyler," said Catherine in a hurt voice, "we're family. You should have trusted us." "I know, and I'm sorry for that," Tyler said sincerely. "But now I understand why everything happened this way, and you'll understand too when you see what I found." Tyler placed the box on the coffee table and opened it carefully. First, he took out Golden Empire's registration papers, showing his noble lineage. "These documents prove the horse really is Golden Empire," Tyler explained. "But there's more." Then, he pulled out the Colonel's handwritten letter and handed it to Gerald. "Read this," he said. "It'll explain everything." Gerald carefully unfolded the letter and began reading aloud. As the Colonel's words were revealed, the family's expressions shifted from irritation to surprise, and finally to emotion. When Gerald finished reading, the room was completely silent. "My goodness," murmured Catherine, tears in her eyes. "Tyler, this letter is the proof you're the Colonel's heir. And it explains why Golden Empire acted so strangely since he arrived, added Bethany. He was trying to lead Tyler to the truth. Frank, who had been quietly processing everything, finally spoke. Tyler, I understand why you hid this at first, but do you realize what this means? You could be the rightful owner of one of the largest farms in the region. I know, said Tyler, and it's overwhelming. I don't even know where to start to claim this inheritance. We'll help you, Gerald said firmly. Your family and family sticks together. We'll hire a lawyer and sort this out legally. But first, Catherine said, standing up and hugging Tyler, I want to apologize for all the teasing these past few days. You were right from the start about that horse being special. We all owe you an apology, Bethany said. You followed your gut, and you were absolutely right. And I've learned an important lesson, Frank added. Never underestimate someone's instinct, especially when it comes to animals. The atmosphere in the house had completely changed. What had started as distrust and irritation had turned into family support and genuine emotion. There's one more thing, Tyler said, pulling the last documents from the box. These look like maps of the Colonel's property, and there are markings that suggest other secrets are hidden on the farm. Gerald examined the maps closely. These are detailed maps of Whitestone Farm, he confirmed. And you're right about the markings. They seem to point to specific places where something might be buried or hidden. What do you think it could be? Asked Bethany. I don't know, Tyler said. But the letter says Golden Empire knows all the farm's secrets. Maybe he can guide us to those other spots. That's incredible, Frank said, shaking his head in awe. A horse guarding the secrets of an entire farm. So, what do we do now? Asked Catherine. First, Gerald said, we'll go to the lawyer first thing tomorrow to start the legal process of claiming the inheritance. With these documents and the letter, we have a strong case. Second, continued Bethany, we need to take very good care of Golden Empire. He clearly has an important role in all of this. And third, added Frank with a smile, we need to go to Whitestone Farm and find out what other secrets are hidden there. Tyler looked around at his family, feeling immense gratitude for the support he was receiving. What had started as a lonely and questioned decision had turned into the discovery of his true identity and heritage. Thank you, he said simply, for everything, for supporting me, for forgiving me for hiding information, and for being willing to help me with all of this. No need to thank us, said Gerald. That's what family does. That night, Tyler went to check on Golden Empire one last time before bed. The horse was visibly stronger and healthier, as if he knew his mission was being fulfilled. Well, boy, said Tyler, stroking the animal's neck, we did it. We uncovered the whole truth, and now we're going to reclaim your home. Golden Empire let out a soft whinny, a sound Tyler now recognized as approval and contentment. Tomorrow we'll start the legal process, Tyler continued, and soon you'll be back at the farm where you were born, treated like the noble horse you've always been. As he walked back home, Tyler reflected on how his life had completely changed in just 4 days. From a poor young man struggling to survive, he had potentially become one of the wealthiest men in the region. But more important than the wealth was the discovery of his true identity and family connection. He had found not just a material inheritance, but also an understanding of his roots and his place in the world. And all thanks to a seemingly sick horse that had hidden extraordinary secrets beneath its fragile appearance. On the 5th day, Tyler woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Today would be the day to officially begin the process of claiming Colonel Mitchell's inheritance. After tending to Golden Empire, who continued to improve visibly each day, Tyler joined Gerald and Frank for the trip to the lawyer's office in St. Benedict. Dr. Charles Anderson was a respected lawyer in the region, specializing in inheritance and rural property matters. When Gerald explained the situation, the lawyer listened with growing interest. "This is a fascinating story," said Dr. Anderson after examining all the documents, "and you have a very solid legal basis for the claim. How long do you think it will take to resolve everything?" asked Tyler. "Well, inheritance matters can be complicated," the lawyer explained, "especially when others have already tried to claim the property. But with these documents, especially Colonel Mitchell's handwritten letter, I'd say we have an excellent chance of success. What about the other would-be heirs? Asked Frank. We'll have to prove their claims were unfounded, said Dr. Anderson, but that shouldn't be difficult considering none of them seemed able to provide convincing evidence of kinship. Doctor, said Tyler, there's something that worries me. What if these other claimants try to cause trouble when they find out a legitimate heir has appeared? Dr. Anderson smiled reassuringly. It's a valid concern, but remember, the law is on your side. With proper documentation and clear evidence of kinship, they won't have any legal grounds to challenge your claim. The lawyer explained that the first step would be gathering additional documentation proving Tyler's identity and his relation to Robert Mitchell. This would include birth certificates, his parents' marriage records, and any other evidence of family connection. I'll start the legal proceedings immediately, promised Dr. Anderson, and I'll look into the current status of the property. From what I know, it's still officially without a legal owner, so there shouldn't be major bureaucratic hurdles. After leaving the lawyer's office, Gerald suggested they visit Whitestone Farm. Since we're here, he said, how about we take a look at the property that could be yours? Whitestone Farm was about 20 minutes from town. When they reached the main gate, they found the property seemingly abandoned. The gates were chained shut, and signs indicated the area was under legal dispute. Looks like no one's really taking care of the place, observed Frank. They managed to enter the property through a gap in the back fence. What they saw left them saddened and outraged. The farm, once the pride of the region, now showed clear signs of neglect and abandonment. What a shame, murmured Tyler, eyeing the empty stables and overgrown pastures. Colonel Mitchell must be turning in his grave seeing his property like this. But it can be restored, Gerald said optimistically. With work and investment, this place can be what it once was. They walked through the property, and Tyler could imagine how impressive it must have been in the Colonel's time. The main house was majestic, even in its current state of disrepair. The stables were spacious and well-designed, clearly built to house top-quality horses. Tyler, said Frank, do you realize that if all goes well, you'll be the owner of all this? The magnitude of the situation hadn't fully sunk in for Tyler yet. The idea of being responsible for such a large property was both thrilling and daunting. It's a lot of responsibility, he admitted. But you won't be alone, Gerald reminded him. We'll help you with whatever you need. During their visit, they found evidence that others had been on the property recently. Some of the buildings showed signs of being rummaged through, likely by the supposed heirs searching for valuables. At least they didn't find the important documents, said Frank. Thanks to Golden Empire, that information reached the right hands. On their way back, they stopped again to speak with Joseph, wanting to update him on their discoveries. I knew it, Joseph exclaimed when he heard the confirmation that Tyler was the Colonel's nephew. There was something familiar about him from the very start. Now I understand what it was. Do you think the Colonel would be happy knowing Golden Empire found its way back to the family? Tyler asked. I'm sure he would, Joseph said with a smile. The Colonel always said that horse was special, that it had almost human intelligence. Seems he was right. Joseph also shared valuable information about the other supposed heirs who had come forward after the Colonel's death. There were 3 different people, he explained. One claimed to be a distant cousin, another said he had a verbal promise of inheritance, and the third insisted he was the Colonel's illegitimate son. And none could prove their claims? Asked Frank. Not one, Joseph confirmed. And they all seemed more interested in selling the property quickly than preserving the Colonel's legacy. Quite different from Tyler, Gerald remarked. He's more concerned with honoring his great-uncle's memory than financial gain. Back at Clear Creek Ranch, they found Catherine and Bethany eager to hear the day's news. The lawyer was optimistic, Gerald reported. Said we have a very strong legal case. And the farm? Bethany asked. How does it look? Abandoned, but it can be restored, said Tyler. It'll take a lot of work, but it's worth it. We'll help you with everything, promised Catherine. This family has always stuck together, and that's not going to change now. During dinner, the conversation revolved around plans to restore Whitestone Farm, assuming the legal process would be successful. The first priority should be repairing the stables, suggested Frank, "and bringing Royal Emperor back to his original home." "I agree," said Tyler. "He deserves to be in the place where he was born and raised." "And then we can start breeding," added Bethany. "A horse of Royal Emperor's lineage could be the foundation for rebuilding the farm's noble horse breeding." "One thing at a time," said Gerald sensibly. "First, we'll settle the legal matter, then we'll think about the future." That night, Tyler spent more time than usual with Royal Emperor. The horse seemed to sense that big changes were coming, showing an energy and vitality that grew stronger each day. "Soon you'll be home, boy," said Tyler, carefully brushing the animal's coat. "Back at the farm where you were born with other horses for company." Royal Emperor tilted his head, as if understanding and approving the plans. "But you know our journey together is just beginning, right?" Tyler continued. "We're going to rebuild that farm and make it the pride of the region again." The sixth day brought an unexpected surprise. Dr. Anderson called early with urgent news. One of the previous claimants had learned about Tyler's new claim and was threatening legal action. "Who is it?" asked Tyler when Gerald relayed the information. "A man named Victor Sanders," said Gerald. "Apparently, he was the most persistent of the three claimants." "What does he want?" asked Frank. "Dr. Anderson said he's demanding a meeting to discuss the situation," Gerald explained. "He'll probably try some kind of intimidation or blackmail." "So what do we do?" asked Tyler, feeling his anxiety rise. "We face it head-on," Gerald said firmly. "With the truth on our side and a good lawyer, we have nothing to fear." The meeting was scheduled for late afternoon at Dr. Anderson's office. Tyler, Gerald, and Frank prepared for what could be a difficult confrontation. Victor Sanders turned out to be exactly the kind of man they expected. Middle-aged, well-dressed, with an arrogant and intimidating air. He arrived with his own lawyer, a man who seemed just as unpleasant as his client. "So you're the young man who appeared out of nowhere claiming to be the Colonel's heir," said Victor, looking Tyler up and down with disdain. "Convenient, don't you think?" "There's nothing convenient about it," Tyler replied calmly. "I didn't even know about my great-uncle's existence until a few days ago." Of course," Victor said sarcastically. "And do you happen to have any real proof of this claim?" Dr. Anderson stepped in, presenting all the documents that proved Tyler's identity and his relation to the Colonel. Victor's lawyer examined them with growing discomfort, clearly realizing they were genuine and convincing. "These documents could be fake," Victor said desperately. "Anyone can forge papers these days." "Are you suggesting my client falsified official documents?" Dr. Anderson asked in a dangerous tone. "That's a very serious accusation." "I'm saying this is all too convenient," Victor insisted. "This young man shows up out of nowhere just when I was close to settling the inheritance." "Close to settling how?" asked Frank. "From what we know, you've never been able to provide convincing evidence for your claim." "I don't owe you any explanations," Victor replied aggressively. "Actually," said Dr. Anderson, "given the clear evidence supporting my client's legitimate claim, you do need to justify yourself, or withdraw your objection." The meeting dragged on for over 2 hours, with Victor desperately searching for loopholes in Tyler's documentation. But the evidence was irrefutable, and it gradually became clear his position was untenable. "This isn't over," Victor finally said, standing abruptly. "I'll take this to court if I have to." "Be our guest," Dr. Anderson replied calmly. "We're prepared to defend our client's rightful claims." After Victor and his lawyer left, Dr. Anderson turned to Tyler with a smile. "He has no legal grounds to challenge you. It was just an intimidation tactic. With the documents we have, especially the Colonel's handwritten letter, no court would question your identity as the rightful heir." "So it's settled?" Tyler asked. "We still have to follow formal legal procedures," Dr. Anderson explained. "But yes, I can confidently say Whitestone Farm will soon be officially yours." The relief Tyler felt was overwhelming. Throughout the meeting, he'd worried Victor might have some legal trick to complicate things. "How long do you think it'll take to finalize everything?" Gerald asked. "With luck, a few weeks," said Dr. Anderson. "I'll expedite every possible step." On the way home, the family celebrated their victory over Victor Sanders. "Did you see his face when he realized he couldn't dispute the documents?" Frank laughed. "Priceless." "Men like him disgust me," Gerald said, "trying to take advantage of an abandoned property. At least now we know there won't be any serious legal hurdles, Tyler said. I can start making real plans for the farm. That night, Tyler shared the good news with Golden Empire. We weathered the storm, boy, he said, stroking the horse, now visibly stronger and healthier. Soon, you'll be home for good. The 7th day, the deadline of Tyler's agreement with Gerald, arrived with a sense of total victory. Golden Empire hadn't just survived and recovered, he'd been the catalyst for uncovering Tyler's true identity. At breakfast, Gerald made a point of formally acknowledging he'd lost the bet. Tyler, he said solemnly, you were right about that horse from day one. I apologize for doubting your instincts. No need to apologize, Uncle, Tyler replied. I know it seemed crazy at the time. More than that, Gerald continued, you've shown wisdom and maturity that impress me. And now that we know your true story, I want you to know you'll always have this family's full support. We always knew you were special, Catherine added, but we never imagined how much. In the following days, as they waited for the legal process to conclude, Tyler spent time planning the restoration of Whitestone Farm. Golden Empire had become his constant advisor and companion in the process. The horse seemed to understand when Tyler showed him property maps, reacting differently to certain marked areas. Are you trying to tell me something about these spots? Tyler asked one day, noticing how Golden Empire grew restless when he pointed to specific markings on the maps. The horse stamped its hoof 3 times, which Tyler had learned to interpret as confirmation. So there are more secrets hidden at the ranch, murmured Tyler. Well, we'll soon find out what they are. 2 weeks after the confrontation with Victor Sanders, Dr. Anderson called with the final news. Tyler, he said with evident satisfaction, I'm pleased to inform you that all legal procedures have been completed. Whitestone Farm is officially yours. The emotion Tyler felt was indescribable. In less than a month, his life had completely changed, from a poor young man with no prospects to the owner of one of the largest ranches in the region. Thank you, Doctor, Tyler said, his voice choked. Thank you for everything. It was a pleasure working on such an interesting case, said Dr. Anderson. And now, if I may offer some advice, honor your great-uncle's memory. Rebuild that ranch and make it the pride of the region once again. You can count on me to do just that, Tyler promised. The news was met with celebration by the entire family. Catherine wept with emotion, Bethany hugged Tyler tightly, and even Frank, usually more reserved, showed genuine happiness for his cousin. Now we can finally start making serious plans, said Gerald. When do you want to officially take possession of the property? Tomorrow, Tyler replied without hesitation, and I want to take Royal Emperor with me. It's time for him to come home. And we're coming with you, said Catherine. This is a historic occasion for our family. The next day, the entire Mitchell family set out for Whitestone Farm. Tyler had brought Royal Emperor in a trailer, and the horse grew increasingly excited as they neared the property. When they reached the main gates, Tyler had a solemn moment. He took the keys Dr. Anderson had given him and officially unlocked the gates to his land. Welcome back, boy, he said to Royal Emperor as he guided the horse onto the ranch. You're home. The horse seemed to recognize every inch of the property, leading Tyler straight to the main stables as if it had never left. Look at that, said Bethany, impressed. He really knows this place like the back of his hand, your hoof. Tyler released Royal Emperor into one of the main paddocks, and the horse immediately began galloping freely, clearly happy to be back in its original territory. Now, let's explore the other secrets the maps point to, said Tyler, pulling out the documents he'd brought with him. Following the markings on the maps and observing Royal Emperor's reactions, they discovered several spots where the colonel had hidden valuable objects and documents. Near the main house, they found a small buried box containing antique family jewelry. In another spot, they uncovered historical documents about horse breeding in the region. But the most astonishing discovery was near the main stables. Guided by Royal Emperor's cues, they found an underground passage leading to a kind of natural vault. My goodness, murmured Frank as they entered the underground chamber with lanterns. Just look at this. The space was filled with treasures, antique silver, historical documents, and even some gold bars the colonel had apparently hidden away over the years. Your great-uncle was a very cautious man, Gerald observed. He kept his true wealth hidden from everyone. And Royal Emperor knew all about it, Tyler added, looking admiringly at the horse waiting patiently outside. He really was trained to be the guardian of all these secrets. The discovery of the hidden treasures meant Tyler was even wealthier than they had imagined. But for him, the true wealth lay in reclaiming his family identity and the special connection he had developed with Golden Empire. During the following weeks, Tyler embarked on an ambitious project to restore Whitestone Farm. With the financial resources he had uncovered and the unwavering support of his family, he hired the best professionals in the region to return the property to its former glory. Golden Empire supervised all the work with interest, as if approving every improvement made to his ancestral home. As the farm was restored, the horse seemed to regain not only his physical health, but also his natural dignity and nobility. "He's turning into the magnificent horse he always was," Bethany observed during one of the family's visits to the farm under restoration. "And Tyler is becoming the rancher he was born to be," Catherine added proudly. 3 months after the discovery of Tyler's true identity, Whitestone Farm was nearly fully restored. The stables shone like new, the pastures were lush and well-tended, and the main house had regained its original majesty. Tyler had also brought other horses to the farm, creating an environment where Golden Empire could socialize and eventually sire a new generation of noble horses. "You did it," Gerald said during the farm's reopening celebration, which brought together the entire local community. "You've honored Colonel Mitchell's memory and restored this property's dignity." "I didn't do it alone," Tyler replied, glancing toward Golden Empire, who grazed peacefully in his favorite paddock. "I had a very special partner guiding me through this whole journey." The celebration lasted well into the night, with people from all over the region coming to hear the extraordinary story of how a seemingly sick horse had revealed secrets that completely changed a family's life. Joseph was among the guests, and he never tired of telling anyone who would listen how he had sensed there was something special about that young man and that horse at the livestock fair. "I knew they were made for each other," he said, beaming. "Destiny has these wonderful coincidences." During the celebration, Tyler made sure to take the guests to meet Golden Empire in person. "This is the real hero of this story," he told the group gathered near the paddock. "Without him, I would never have discovered my true identity or reclaimed this property." Golden Empire, as if understanding he was the center of attention, approached the fence and nodded his head at the guests, prompting applause and admiration. "He looks like he's posing for pictures," laughed one of the visitors. "That's because he knows he's a celebrity," Tyler replied, affectionately stroking the horse's neck. As the night wore on and the guests began to leave, Tyler found himself alone with Golden Empire under the starry sky. "Well, boy," he said, leaning against the paddock fence, "we did everything we promised. The farm is restored, you're healthy and happy, and I've discovered who I really am." Golden Empire stepped closer and gently rested his head on Tyler's shoulder, a gesture that had become a ritual between them. "But you know our story doesn't end here, right?" Tyler continued. "Now we have to build the future. Make this farm the pride of the region again, raise a new generation of noble horses, and honor Uncle Anthony's memory." The horse gave a soft whinny, as if agreeing with the plans. "And most importantly," Tyler added, "I'll never forget the lesson you taught me. That sometimes the most valuable things in life come disguised, hidden beneath appearances others overlook." As he gazed at the stars, Tyler reflected on the extraordinary journey he had lived through these past weeks. It had begun as an act of compassion for a seemingly doomed animal and had transformed into the discovery of his true identity and purpose in life. "Thank you," he whispered to Golden Empire, "for choosing me, for trusting me, and for guiding me back home." Golden Empire stayed close to him for a long while, both enjoying the peace and tranquility of the night. It was as if the horse, too, was reflecting on the remarkable journey they had shared. The next day, Tyler woke with a sense of complete contentment. Everything that had started with an impulsive decision to save a sick horse had turned into the most extraordinary adventure of his life. He went to check on Golden Empire and found the horse vibrant and full of energy, galloping freely across the pasture with the other horses Tyler had brought to the ranch. "Good morning, partner," Tyler greeted. "Ready for another day building our future together?" Golden Empire approached the fence and nodded his head, his eyes shining with the intelligence and dignity that had always been there, even when he had seemed like nothing more than a sick and abandoned horse. Tyler smiled, knowing he had made the right decision that day at the St. Benedict Cattle Fair. Sometimes, following your heart and intuition leads to discoveries far beyond what any logic could predict. And as he watched Golden Empire gallop majestically across the pasture, Tyler knew with certainty that this was only the beginning of a new and extraordinary chapter in their lives. The end of the story. What an emotional story we've just shared. The power of Tyler's compassion and intuition teaches us that great discoveries can come from the simplest gestures. Now we want to know, which part of the story moved you the most? Share your thoughts on Tyler and Golden Empire's journey in the comments. Leave a like if the story touched your heart, and subscribe to the channel for more soul-warming tales.